I've got 3 days left on this earth. 3 days. And you know what I decide to do? Be the perfect husband for Sarah, like the kind she always dreamed of. No more bickering about her old flame, Mark. The first day, she just rolls her eyes. Took you long enough, she says, all sarcastic. If you'd been like this all along, things would be a lot better. Ouch. Second day, she's looking at me all weird, voice kinda shaky. Ethan, why aren't you getting mad? I just give her this little smile. Isn't this what you wanted? Okay, rewind a bit. Before all this perfect husband stuff, Sarah and I were basically giving each other the silent treatment. For a week. Then, this voice in my head, it's this system thing, don't ask. Practically cheers. So you're finally giving up, huh? I can't even blame it. Years ago, when I first got together with Sarah and decided to stay in this, world, the system tried to talk me out of it. Guys like you who stay, it never ends pretty, it warned me. But you know, I was young and dumb, convinced Sarah and I were forever. Now, I'm just bitter. How long do I have? I ask. Could be as little as 3 days. Right. So I figure, might as well make the most of it with Sarah. After the system goes quiet, I call Sarah. It's been ages since we actually talked. But she keeps hitting decline. I'm persistent, though. Finally, she picks up, sounding totally annoyed. Ethan, can you just stop? My heart's already pretty numb, but that still stings. I ignore it. Sarah, are you coming home for dinner? Silence, then the eye roll. I'll come back if you get off your high horse and apologize to Mike first. See, a week ago, Sarah was helping her ex, Mike, celebrate his birthday. Mike posts this picture online, all lovey-dovey. With you, I don't need anyone else. In the pic, Mike's making a wish, surrounded by fancy gifts, and Sarah's right there behind him. Candlelight, the whole romantic deal. Everyone's commenting about how cute they are. Mike just puts up a shh emoji. I liked the post and commented, "Lucky guy having my wife there." Boom, post deleted. Sarah calls me yelling, "Ethan, are you crazy? It's Mike's birthday and you had to go and ruin it." Mike's in the background, all soft-spoken. Sarah, don't be mad at Ethan. I was just showing off that you were with me. Sarah's all comforting to him. It's not your fault, he's just being a jerk, taking it out on you. Then, to me, ice cold. But he went too far. Nothing is more important than your birthday. Each word felt like getting stabbed. I clench my fists, sneering. Oh, right, your ex's birthday is way more important than our anniversary. She pauses. Today's our anniversary? Before I can even answer, Mike's back on the line. Ethan, I'm so sorry. It's my fault. I'll apologize in person. Whatever guilt Sarah felt, gone. She's back to comforting Mike and chewing me out. It's just an anniversary. We can celebrate at any time, but this is Mike's first birthday since he came back. Can't you be a little understanding, Ethan? I tell her, flat out, no. Then I hang up. It's like deep love and a steady relationship, they just don't mix. Sarah never got that. The ice cream cake, the one with the little kissing figures, melts. It stains the happy 7th anniversary message. I pick it up and chuck it in the trash. New message. It's Mike from his secret account. Ethan, I told you if Sarah had to choose, she'd pick me. Believe it now? Hours ago? I wouldn't have. Now? It's reality. Sarah doesn't come home that night. I wake up and she's eating breakfast. She sees me, gives me this cold look and says, "Come to the office with me later and apologize to Mike. He couldn't sleep because of your comment." I scoff. Not happening. I've never known a man to apologize to his wife's boy toy. Ethan, why do you have to be so mean? She slams the table. Mike's just my assistant. He's lost everything. Can't you show some compassion? I smirk. An assistant you've been with? Her face changes. She throws her bowl on the floor. It shatters. I just watch her. Disappointment is piling up. How did Sarah become this? If you're going to be this stubborn, she spits, then let's take a break. She slams the door on her way out. She's gone for a week. I'm losing sleep. My chest hurts. Meanwhile, Mike's secret account is busy. Business trip to Bali with the boss. Haha, the boss knew I like cupcakes. Thought she'd say it's silly for a guy to like them. The boss looks amazing in a swimsuit. I don't even argue anymore. I just save the screenshots. When something's rotten, you throw it out. This morning, Mike's post says they're back from Bali. Sarah's voice is still on the line. Ethan, did you hear me? I snap out of it. Yeah, okay. The noise on her end suddenly stops. A few seconds later, what did you say? I force a smile. I said I'll apologize to Mike. For these last 3 days, I'll do whatever you want. Then I'm gone. For good. I follow the address Sarah sent. It's this buzzing private room packed with people. As soon as I walk in, someone says, Ethan's here, all teasing, like they're waiting for a show. Since Mike came back, Sarah and I have been fighting constantly. All our friends know. I find Sarah, sitting right in the middle of the sofa. We lock eyes, but I can't read her expression. Mike's next to her. Ethan, I heard you're here to apologize to Mike, right? Someone jeers. Sarah's friends are pros at reading the room. When Sarah loved me, they called me Ethan. No jokes. Now that Mike's back, and everyone can see where Sarah's heart is, their attitude toward me is different, way more dismissive. I step forward, looking at the full wine glasses on the table. I pick one up. To show I'm serious, I'll drink this as an apology to Mr. Johnson. Sarah tilts her head, watching me silently. Everyone else is buzzing, like they're watching a play. Ethan, what are you doing? Mike suddenly stands up and grabs the glass. Ethan, you had every right to be mad. You don't need to apologize. But his face says something else, like I'm forcing him to do this. A flicker of something, pain, flashes in Sarah's eyes. She stands up, telling him to sit. If he misunderstood you, he should apologize. I'm here, so don't worry. Mike looks grateful, then turns to me after a few seconds. Then, Ethan, just drink this, and we're good. He smiles, handing me the glass. You're not still mad, are you? I look at Sarah, give a faint, almost blank smile, and take the glass. Of course not. I raise the glass. Everyone here, witness. I misunderstood Sarah and Mr. Johnson's relationship, which caused trouble for Mr. Johnson. Today, I'll drink this as punishment and apologize to Mr. Johnson. After I finish, I look around. Everyone's stunned. Someone whispers, Is this really the Ethan who never backs down? Sarah, in the center, looks shocked for a split second. I ignore it, raise my hand, and down the wine. I'm allergic to alcohol. Most people might not know, but Sarah does. As I finish, my body feels like I'm floating. Someone helps steady me. Ethan, don't drink anymore. Her face is blurry, and I struggle to make it out. It's Sarah's friend, Ashley. She seems to be the only one who hasn't joined in the mocking. Thanks, I whisper. I try to look up and ask Sarah if this apology is enough. But I see Mike give the others a quick look. Immediately, someone shouts, Ethan's got a good tolerance, but one glass isn't enough to show he's really sorry. They push a whole bottle of red wine toward me. Then they look back at Sarah. Sarah, don't you think so? Sarah frowns, about to speak. Mike interrupts again. Don't say that. Ethan's apologizing to a guy like me. That's already more than I deserve. As long as Ethan doesn't barge into the office to humiliate or hit me again, I'll be thankful. Sarah looks at him, shocked. He barged in and hit you when—" Her voice rises, and the room goes silent. "It was on my first day as your assistant," Mike says. Anger flares in Sarah's eyes as she turns to me. I admit it calmly. That's right. I did go that day. Before that, Sarah and I had argued, endlessly, because of Mike. In the middle of the night, Mike would call her to go with him to the hospital for stomach pain. When buying clothes, Mike would send pictures, asking her which one looked best. We argued. We fought. "Sarah, can't you think about my feelings a little? I love you. I can't help but mind you being so close to another man. It hurts me, too." "You know you're the most important person to me in this world," she had said. She promised to keep her distance from Mike. But just a few days later, I got a message from Mike. "Ethan, what's the point of trying to stop me? As long as I say a few words, Sarah still made me her assistant." I thought he was lying, trying to cause trouble. I believed Sarah wouldn't lie to me. But still, feeling uneasy, I went to Sarah's office quietly. And there I saw Mike, sitting in the assistant's office. He had his hand propped up, looking smug. "Ethan, check out my watch. Sarah gave it to me as a welcome gift." His smug face disgusted me. I raised my hand and punched him. "Mike, picking up someone's leftovers? Aren't you disgusted?" He rubbed his face but looked at me with an arrogant smile. "Ethan, are you scared because you feel like you're losing Sarah?" Now, Mike touches his unmarked cheek and says, "Ethan only punched me once. I'm a grown man. One punch is nothing if it calms him down." Sarah's face darkens as she looks at me, eyes filled with rage, like she could swallow me whole. "Ethan, I thought you were just possessive and couldn't handle Mike's return, but I didn't expect you to be someone who would fly into a rage and hit others." Her cold voice shows no compassion. "I think even drinking the whole bottle is too lenient for you." I look up, shocked. "Is that really how you see me?" Sarah scoffs. "Actions speak louder than words." "You know I can't drink." I stare at her. Sarah sneers. "Then what are you here for today?" She looks toward the door behind me. "If you're not here to apologize, you can leave now." My heart feels like it's being stabbed by 1,000 needles. It was as if a hand had clenched around my heart, making it hard to breathe. I was surprised to realize that before coming here, I thought I was ready to leave this world, but it seemed there was still a sliver of hope in my heart. Maybe it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe she still loved me, but that bottle of wine crushed that last bit of hope. "Sarah, I won't love you anymore." I smile at her. "If I drink this bottle, will you come home with me?" Mike also looks up at her. Sarah's eyes give nothing away as she slowly says, "The person you need to apologize to is Mike, not me." "Ethan, adults should take responsibility for their actions." I swallow the bitterness and nod. "All right." But in the next second, the bottle is snatched from my hand. "Ethan, drinking a whole bottle could kill you." It's Ashley. Sarah purses her lips, ignoring her, and just looks at me. "Ethan, the choice is yours. I'm not forcing you." My heart had already been shattered into pieces, and now I didn't even feel the pain. "I'll drink." I take the bottle from Ashley, quietly thank her again, and put my mouth to the bottle, gulping it down. In my daze, I seem to see Sarah pushing through the crowd, walking toward me. The bottle is taken from my hand, and my body falls heavily. "Sarah, this wine is damn bitter." In my dream, it felt like I was back 7 years ago. I had just arrived in this world. Back then, Sarah was repressed, in pain, and hated everyone around her. She was an illegitimate child, brought back to the Miller family only after her mother passed away. The system reminded me of the story's background. When Sarah was a child and first returned to the Miller family, she wasn't liked by the other children from prominent families and was often bullied. One time, when a group of these children were shooting her with water guns, Mike, dressed in a little suit, stepped forward to defend her. This became a cherished memory that Sarah would never forget. But what she didn't know was that Mike was only doing it to impress the heroine, who was watching from a distance, trying to appear brave and kind. Sarah, in all this, was merely a tool. When I arrived, Sarah was already making a name for herself in the Miller family, but she was cold-blooded, ruthless in business, and not favored by the patriarch of the Miller family. I, the youngest son of a family that had been friends with the Miller family for generations, had just returned to the country and was introduced to her as a potential match. Initially, Sarah had no interest in me. For an entire month, there was no progress. Then, one day, I attended a landmark negotiation on behalf of my father, and Sarah was there as well. At the dinner, an important figure deliberately made things difficult for me, insisting I toast each person at the table. After one glass, my body started itching, red rashes slowly appearing. As I lifted the second glass to my lips, someone reached out and stopped me. It was Sarah. She took the glass from my hand and smiled faintly at everyone. The Miller and Carter families are close. I'll take the remaining toasts on Ethan's behalf. Amidst the clinking glasses, she subtly shifted the conversation away from me and leaned in to whisper, "If you're allergic to alcohol, I suggest you quietly leave now and take some medicine. I'll cover for you." I paused, looking up at her, but her eyes had already brightened as she smoothly joined in the conversation with everyone else. Confident, poised, at ease. In that moment, I knew I had fallen for her. I began deliberately showing up around her, slowly softening her sharp edges, helping her build a closer relationship with the Miller family patriarch. I also used connections from the Carter family to help her secure one contract after another, increasing her influence within the Miller family. Our joint efforts left footprints across the globe. During a negotiation in Southeast Asia, we got caught in a crossfire between local factions. We were trapped for 3 days and nights. As we were about to leave the jungle, we encountered bandits. I stepped in front of her, and a bullet hit my left chest. In that critical moment, the backup we had arranged finally arrived, rescuing us from the group of desperados. In the car that took me to the hospital, Sarah's eyes were swollen from crying, her tears falling heavily onto me. She was trembling all over, asking why I was so foolish, begging me to hold on. She said, "We haven't had our wedding yet. You haven't become my husband. You can't die." At that moment, I really thought I would die on that land. I raised my hand to touch Sarah's face and forced a smile. "Don't cry, Sarah. I came to this world just for you." At the same time, the system notified me. "Host, progress is at 100%. Congratulations, you've succeeded." Luckily, the bullet hadn't hit a fatal spot, and I survived. After 3 months of recovery, I married Sarah in a grand wedding that made headlines worldwide. On countless nights after we were married, during our passionate moments, she would repeatedly tell me she loved me. By then, Mike had already married the heroine overseas. I thought there would be no more complications in our world. In a daze, I felt someone trying to undress me. I pushed her away forcefully. "Don't touch me," I mumbled, pushing her away. The person hesitated, her hand hovering over the scar where the bullet had hit me. The wound was long healed, new skin grown over it. But the memory? That was seared onto me. She seemed stunned for a long time. Then, softly, she coaxed, "Stop fussing. Let's get you changed and take a bath." She kept muttering things I couldn't quite hear. I covered her mouth. So noisy. Then, suddenly, I felt this wave of sadness and laughed, a bitter sound. She asked what I was laughing about. I said, "My wife's fallen for someone else. I love her, but she doesn't love me anymore." She seemed stunned. After that, I don't really know what happened. I fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up, it was daylight. Sunlight was streaming through the curtains, making patterns on the walls. The system's voice piped up. "Host, you have to leave tomorrow. Any regrets?" It reminded me, Sarah is just outside. As soon as the system finished, Sarah appeared at the door with some honey water. She spoke softly, looking a little awkward. "Ethan, you're awake." I didn't take the glass. Instead, I drank from Sarah's hand. This kind of closeness, we hadn't had that in a long time. After Mike came back, I found Sarah repulsive, and we were sleeping in separate rooms. Sarah's eyes brightened, and a smile touched her lips. "You knew you couldn't drink, but you insisted," she said, her voice like she was scolding me. But almost immediately, she seemed to remember that she was the reason I drank. She went quiet, a flicker of guilt in her eyes. It seemed like she was waiting for my usual sarcastic comeback. That's how we'd been talking to each other lately, but I just smiled apologetically. "You're right. I won't do it again." Sarah looked up at me, surprised. She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it again. I spoke first. "Sarah, will you come with me to see Grandpa today?" She nodded immediately. "Of course. Grandpa's been asking about you." We went to the supermarket together, holding hands as we walked to the health supplements section. I carefully picked out one thing after another, asking her opinion every now and then. After a few times, she laughed, a little helplessly. "Are you planning to buy out the whole store?" I looked over and realized the supplements I'd chosen were piled up like a small mountain. Sarah kept teasing, "Looks like we brought the wrong car. Should have brought a truck instead of the Bentley to haul all this." I smiled. "Better to buy more now, so Grandpa won't run out later." "We can always come back if we need more," she replied casually. I smiled without answering, just lowered my head and continued picking out items. But somehow I felt like someone was watching me, scrutinizing me. I didn't want to think too much about it and ignored it. Once I was done, I asked Sarah to call the housekeeper to pick up the supplements. We only carried the best 2 items ourselves. When we reached the underground parking lot, I suddenly exclaimed, "Oh no, I forgot!" Sarah, seeing my anxious face, quickly asked what was wrong. I immediately opened the car door and got out. "I forgot to buy knee pads and a back brace. Grandpa's knees and back aren't in great shape." Sarah followed me out of the passenger seat, grabbing my hand with an exasperated smile. "It's still hot now. He doesn't need knee pads or a back brace yet." I shook my head. "He'll need them when it gets cold." I ignored her attempts to stop me and kept walking toward the supermarket entrance. Sarah caught up, still holding on to me. "Ethan, why are you in such a hurry?" She was smiling gently, but I could see the unease deep in her eyes. "I'll come with you to buy them in the winter, okay?" Without waiting for my response, she pulled me back to the car. "Sarah." Forget it, I sighed inwardly. I was leaving tomorrow, and I didn't want to argue with her. The car re-entered the main road, and Sarah remained silent. The quiet was kind of awkward. I drove, my eyes unintentionally landing on the car ornament. Sarah noticed and quickly explained, "Mike changed it last time he was in the car. I'll replace it with the original 8 auspicious symbols when we get home." I paused, then spoke slowly. "No need to change it. This little rabbit is quite cute." The yellow light ahead turned red. I stopped the car, and Sarah tilted her head to look at me, her eyes filled with questions. "What's wrong?" I asked. She frowned slightly. "You're not angry? Before, whenever Mike's things were around me, you would get mad." I smiled faintly. So that was it. Now that I didn't care, how could I be angry? "I was wrong before," I looked calmly at the license plate of the car in front of us. You and Mike have a bond from growing up together. Now that he's divorced, back home, and lost everything, I should be more sympathetic and considerate toward him. I shouldn't have made a big deal out of it before. I sighed softly. Sarah's frown deepened. But the 8 auspicious symbols were something you personally knelt and prayed for. You really don't mind? The light ahead turned green, and I didn't answer, instead starting the car again. But in my heart, I asked myself, did I mind? My thoughts drifted back to the day I went to Mount Wutai. At that time, Sarah had already fully taken control of the Miller family, but there were still many on the board who were unhappy with her. Why should a woman be in charge? Why should they be under her? Every now and then, there would be assassination attempts. I was terrified she would get hurt, so I made a special trip to Mount Wutai. I knelt and bowed 3 times, repeatedly praying in my heart for the gods to protect Sarah and keep her safe. The 8 auspicious symbols ornament, blessed by the monks, was also obtained then. The 8 auspicious symbols include the parasol, golden fish, treasure vase, lotus, white conch, endless knot, victory banner, and golden wheel. They symbolize complete blessings and the ability to turn misfortune into good fortune. The entire journey involved 1,080 steps, which left my knees and forehead bruised and scraped. When I returned with the blessed item, Sarah found out. She tenderly applied ice to my bruises, kissing the corners of my mouth. She took the 8 auspicious symbols ornament carefully, and said that as long as it was there, she would be safe. Now, the ornament had disappeared, and I wouldn't ask about it again. The Sarah I had loved wholeheartedly was the one who was passionate and wonderful, not the one now, wavering and indulgent of Mike's provocations. "Ethan," she called my name. But her phone interrupted. It was Mike. Sarah hesitated, but I smiled and motioned for her to answer. Before she could react, I reached over and connected the call to the car's Bluetooth system. "Sarah," Mike's voice came through. Sarah looked at me awkwardly. "What's wrong, Mike?" "Sarah, I stepped on a nail and it pierced my foot. I can't stand up right now. Can you take me to the hospital?" He shifted the camera angle. In the video, there was indeed a nail sticking out of Mike's foot, but it wasn't deep. I couldn't help but chuckle. He would go to any lengths to get Sarah's attention. Hearing my laugh, Mike's voice became deliberately anxious. "Sarah, is Ethan there too? Am I bothering you too?" He lowered his voice. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I didn't mean to. You know I have no family here anymore." "Forget it. I'll handle it myself." On screen, Mike pretended to try to pull the nail out, only to wince dramatically in pain. "Don't move, I'll—" Sarah placed her hand on the car door handle, instinctively wanting to get out. But in the next moment, it was as if she remembered something. She spoke gently to Mike. "Ethan and I have some things to take care of right now, so I can't come. I'll call Ashley to go over." I looked at Sarah in surprise. The video call ended. Sarah blinked awkwardly. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Before I could answer, a sarcastic laugh escaped me. So she knew how to say no. She could see through Mike's little tricks. What then had all our arguments and her repeated defenses been for? Seeing I wasn't answering, she dialed Ashley's number on her own, asking her to check on Mike. Ashley shot back, "Girl, I can help you with other things, but I can't do this. Just seeing that green tea guy makes me sick." "You always pity him, but his misery isn't Ethan's fault." "Don't blame me for not warning you. If you keep letting him lead you by the nose, you'll end up really hurting Ethan one day." The system suddenly spoke. "Host, this Ashley is a true friend." The unexpected voice startled me, and I almost crashed into the car in front of us. Sarah was the one who steadied the steering wheel, preventing the crash. I instinctively thanked her. She looked momentarily surprised, then said, "Ethan, we're husband and wife. No need to be so formal." I composed myself. I need to focus on driving. Just as we were about to reach the Miller family estate, Sarah's phone rang again. It was Mike. Sarah showed a flash of irritation as she answered, "What now?" Her cold tone seemed unfamiliar to Mike. He was silent for a few seconds. "Sarah, are you really not going to help me?" We were almost at the old estate. Sarah looked conflicted. I smiled at her. "Go see Mike first. He's hurt and needs someone with him." She looked at me sadly. "You need someone too." "Sarah," Mike's voice suddenly rose, "you promised me when we were kids that you'd always be there whenever I needed you. Did you forget?" Sarah's body stiffened, and she instinctively looked at me. I chuckled, indifferent. "We're not far from Grandpa's. You drive, and I'll take a cab." Sarah wanted to say more, but I was firm. She agreed to go to Mike, but insisted on taking me to the estate first. When we arrived at the entrance, she stopped. "Ethan, how about you go see Grandpa first, and I'll be back soon?" I watched her get into the driver's seat and start the car without wasting a second. The shadow of her car grew smaller, and then disappeared from my sight. "Sarah, goodbye." My phone vibrated with a notification. It was a private message from Mike. "Ethan, do you think relying on that old man will keep Sarah? You've lost." I typed calmly. "Are you sure?" I had leaked today's schedule with Sarah to Mike. Him calling on the way was also part of my plan. Even though this same scenario had played out countless times, I didn't mind one more. When I leave this place, it will deepen Sarah's guilt and regret. From her reaction earlier, it was clear she still had feelings for me. Maybe, if I had asked her to stay today, she would have ignored Mike and stayed with me. But that late awakening, I'm disgusted by it. I'm curious to see if she will still feel so sure of herself after today. My thoughts were interrupted as Grandpa came out of the estate, leaning on his cane. His gray hair glistened in the sunlight. The old man who had given me the most love and care in this world. It was finally time for our last goodbye. No one would guess that this kind and amiable old man had once been a powerful figure who navigated both legal and illegal worlds. "Take a good look. Isn't it true that our Ethan's grown some gray hair too?" Grandpa laughed, addressing the housekeeper beside him. I was confused by his words. The housekeeper laughed and explained, "The old master is saying that Mr. Carter is still so young. Why has he suddenly become so talkative?" I couldn't help but laugh. Tomorrow I'd be leaving this world for good, and I couldn't help but say a few extra words. I hadn't expected this old man to tease me for it. Night slowly fell. By the time I was about to leave, Sarah still hadn't come. Grandpa cursed a few times and immediately told the housekeeper to call her and have her come for a scolding. The system chimed in. "Don't worry, host. I've blocked Sarah's phone." Sure enough, the housekeeper shook his head helplessly. Grandpa grew more furious. "Find out where she is right away!" Seeing his anger, I hurried to pat his back and calm him down. He looked at me, concern in his eyes. "How long has she been ignoring you like this?" I smiled bitterly, shaking my head. "No, Grandpa. Sarah's just busy today." "You're still defending her?" Grandpa grew even angrier. I knew the more I pretended to be magnanimous now, the harsher the punishment for Sarah and Mike tomorrow would be. After all, everyone in the Miller family knew that Grandpa favored me far more than Sarah. After settling Grandpa into his room, the system explained, "Host, Sarah didn't mean not to come. I made her car's tires blow out." It paused. 3 cars in a row. I refused Grandpa's offer to have someone drive me. "Sarah will be here soon. Tell Grandpa not to worry." Then, I slowly walked out of the estate. According to the plan between me and the system, shortly after leaving the estate, I would be intercepted by robbers and killed. As the cold blade pierced my abdomen, the system detached my consciousness from my body. Bright red blood flowed down the knife, staining the asphalt beneath me dark. Thankfully, I didn't feel any pain. The system manipulated my phone to dial Sarah for one final call. She couldn't answer. In the nights to come, she would remember again and again how she abandoned me for Mike, and how she didn't answer my last desperate call, losing the chance to save me. The robbers panicked when they realized they had killed someone and fled. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. Wife calling. Wife calling. But no one would ever answer again. My body lay twisted in an unnatural position, ribs and knees broken. The robbers, wanting to leave no trace, slashed over a dozen times. The system couldn't bear to watch, covering my eyes. Sorry, I might have gone too far, it said. I shook my head. It's all right. Otherwise, how would Sarah be haunted by this forever? The phone kept buzzing insistently. I watched in silence. The system had told me that on my last day in this world, I would exist as a soul. 2 hours later, Sarah followed the phone's GPS to find my body. The scene before her left her utterly frozen. Sarah reached out in disbelief, her trembling hand checking my breathing. The emptiness she felt made her entire body shiver. She collapsed to the ground. The system spat. What's the point of looking so regretful now? Ethan! Ethan! Wake up! She sobbed uncontrollably, pressing her hands against my wounds. But there were too many, and the blood had long since drained away. Though my soul had left my body, seeing the jagged cuts still made my heart ache. Sarah tried to lift me, to carry me to the hospital, but how could she possibly manage? "Bring the car here!" she screamed. The housekeeper sent by Grandpa to search for me quickly brought the car over. But upon seeing my state, he gasped. "Mr. Carter, he's badly hurt." The system and I sat in the back seat, watching as Sarah floored the accelerator, running red lights one after another. The housekeeper, terrified, pleaded with her to slow down, to be careful. Sarah snapped back at him every time. On our way to the hospital, all the specialists from the Miller family's private hospital were called in. She placed me on a hospital bed, her eyes red as she warned them. "This is my husband. I don't care what you have to do. Save him." The team of specialists, all over 40, took turns trying, but they could only shake their heads in despair at my lifeless body. One of them gently advised, "Miss Miller, it might be better to find a good mortician to make sure Mr. Carter looks presentable." "What did you say?" Sarah's eyes, swollen from crying, widened in disbelief. "You haven't even tried resuscitating him. How dare you declare him dead? If Ethan can't be saved, you'll all pay with your lives." The specialists, pressured by her authority, reluctantly moved me to the ICU, attempting futile efforts. The system covered its ears. "Host, she's lost her mind." I was amused, but my smile was interrupted by a sudden commotion. Grandpa had arrived. His hunched frame shook uncontrollably, his cane striking the floor heavily. How could you make Grandpa bury his own grandson?" My eyes stung with tears. I whispered an apology. "Sorry, Grandpa. I broke my promise. I won't be able to visit you again." In the next moment, Grandpa's cane was thrown forcefully at Sarah. "It's all your fault," Grandpa pointed. "It's all your fault." Grandpa pointed a trembling finger at her, his voice filled with fury. "I just found out you've been spending time with that Johnson boy recently. Ethan was so heartbroken, yet he still defended you in front of me." He approached Sarah, trembling, and slapped her. "Do you think you're worthy of Ethan? Have you forgotten he's not only your husband, but also the one who saved your life?" Those words left the elderly man nearly breathless. The specialists rushed to provide first aid for Grandpa. Sarah collapsed on the floor, her vacant eyes staring at my body, tears streaming down her face. "I thought you'd never leave me. Ethan, I was wrong. I regret it. Please wake up and talk to me." The ICU was deathly silent. The only response was the echo of her heart-wrenching cries. Sarah easily unlocked my phone. The password was the date of our wedding. Her hand trembled as she lit up the screen, and the first thing that appeared was the private message interface on Weibo. With just one glance, Sarah felt as if she'd been electrocuted, frozen in place, her eyes full of shock. She slowly scrolled through the screen. The provocations and insults from Mike over the past few months unfolded before her, one by one, without a single word missing. In that moment, Sarah's world seemed to completely collapse. She watched the indulgence she had once shown Mike transform into countless venomous snakes, biting into her husband. A vibration came from WeChat, and Sarah switched to the WeChat interface. It was a message from my personal doctor. "Mr. Carter, why haven't you come for follow-up treatment recently?" She scrolled up. Soon, she found the diagnosis that confirmed I had severe depression. Diagnosis: extreme emotional distress, complete lack of vitality, frequent feelings of helplessness and despair, suicidal ideation, significant sleep disturbances. Sarah looked at the date of the diagnosis. It felt familiar. Suddenly, she remembered. That was the day Mike joined Coup Corp as her assistant. The doctor had asked, "Why do you feel this way?" I had replied, "My wife's first love came back. She often leaves me for him and fights with me. She wasn't like this before." A few minutes later, I had added, "I think she might not love me anymore." Sarah closed her eyes slowly. Tears fell, soaking the front of her clothes. Her mouth opened and closed, as if struggling to speak. Bitterness filled her mouth. After a long while, her voice finally became audible. Ethan, I'm sorry. I love you. I'm sorry for making you endure so much pain." 2 lines of tears streamed from my eyes as well. My soul was gradually fading. I looked at the system and could see in its eyes that my time in this world was ending. Suddenly, to my surprise, I saw Sarah's gaze meet mine. "Ethan!" She frantically reached out to the empty air, trying to hold on to me, to stop me from leaving. I gave her a wry smile. "Sarah, I have no final words for you, nor will I accept your apology." As the words left my lips, my soul dissipated completely under Sarah's shattered gaze. When I woke up again, I was in a hospital bed. The orphanage director, my foster mother, was crying with joy. "Ethan, you're awake!" She didn't have time to talk to me. She ran to call for the doctor. That's when I remembered that in my original world, I had died saving someone. My soul had entered the Book Transmigration Bureau. The director told me that anyone who died saving someone was given a chance to be reborn. All I had to do was complete the mission assigned during the book transmigration, and I could be reborn in my original world. In the real world, people often called this a medical miracle. My transmigration mission was to win over the obsessive supporting character, Sarah. After recovering and being discharged from the hospital, I returned to the orphanage, continuing my work as deputy director. I had been thrown here as a baby, and I stayed on as I grew up, helping to raise more children. That night, after all the kids had gone to bed, I brewed a pot of tea and sat in the yard for one final chat with the system. "Host, Mike is dead," it said. "Huh?" I was surprised. "Why?" "Those robbers already had blood on their hands. I made sure that when Grandpa Miller caught them, they implicated Mike." I gave the system a thumbs up in admiration, but the system wasn't done. He died worse than you did. You know Grandpa Miller used to run the underworld, right? He liked you so much. He did it himself. The system didn't finish the sentence, only making a throat-slitting gesture. I could imagine just how ruthless Grandpa's methods were. And Sarah, after you left, Grandpa Miller nearly beat her to death too. She gave up on herself, going to your grave every day to drink until she was drunk. She won't last long before she dies of alcohol poisoning. I clicked my tongue in amazement. What a pity. No one left to inherit the Miller family fortune. The system gave a sly smile. A stack of bank cards appeared before me. Once Sarah dies, the Miller family's assets will be transferred to these cards by the Book Transmigration Bureau. Host, are you ready to be super rich? In the quiet summer night, my shout of excitement echoed, "I am ready!"